The Berlin Wall was a very real structure. It was made of concrete and wire, but it was much more than just a physical barrier. For almost 30 years, this wall stood as a powerful symbol. It represented the deep divisions of the Cold War. This was a time of great tension between powerful countries. The United States and the Soviet Union were the main players. They had very different ideas about how countries should be run. The Berlin Wall showed this global conflict in a very stark and visible way, cutting a city in two. This imposing structure did not just divide a city, it divided families, friends, and a nation. It became a focal point of international attention. People around the world looked at the Berlin Wall. They saw it as a clear sign of oppression. They also saw it as a challenge to freedom. The wall was a constant reminder of the Iron Curtain. This was a term used to describe the ideological and physical boundary. This boundary separated communist Eastern Europe from democratic Western Europe. The wall was its most infamous part, yet even in its darkest shadow, the Berlin Wall also became a symbol of something else. It became a symbol of human resilience. It stood for the unyielding desire for freedom. People on both sides, especially in the East, never truly accepted its permanence. Their hopes and actions, small and large, kept the dream of unity alive. The wall's eventual fall would become a moment of immense joy. It would signal not just the end of a divided city, but the beginning of a new era for Germany and for Europe. The story of the Berlin Wall is a complex one. It is a story of political maneuvering and ideological battles. It is also a story of ordinary people. These people faced extraordinary circumstances. They had to make difficult choices. Their lives were changed forever by this concrete monster. Understanding the Berlin Wall means understanding a critical period in modern history. It helps us see how global politics can impact individual lives in very profound ways. Its history teaches us about division, but also about the power of hope. After World War II ended in 1945, Germany was a defeated nation. The victorious Allied powers decided to divide the country. These powers were the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and the Soviet Union. Each country took control of a part of Germany. These parts were called occupation zones. The goal was to rebuild Germany and prevent it from starting another war. This division was meant to be temporary. However, it soon became a more permanent split as Cold War tensions grew between the Allies. Berlin, the capital city, was located deep inside the Soviet occupation zone. However, Berlin itself was also divided. It was split into 4 sectors, just like the rest of Germany. The Western Allies, United States, United Kingdom and France, controlled West Berlin. The Soviet Union controlled East Berlin. This created a strange situation. West Berlin became an island of Western democracy. It was surrounded entirely by Soviet-controlled territory. This unique geography made Berlin a flashpoint in the emerging Cold War. It was a place where East and West directly confronted each other. The initial cooperation between the Allied powers soon broke down. The Soviet Union had a communist government. The Western Allies supported democratic systems. These fundamental differences led to disagreements about Germany's future. In 1949, 2 separate German states were officially formed. The Federal Republic of Germany, or West Germany, was established in the Western zones. It had a democratic government and a capitalist economy. The German Democratic Republic, or East Germany, was established in the Soviet zone. It had a communist government and a centrally planned economy. This division of Germany solidified the separation of Europe. The former capital, Berlin, remained a divided city within a divided nation. East Berlin became the capital of East Germany. West Berlin remained connected to West Germany, but it was geographically isolated. This peculiar status of Berlin would become a source of constant tension. It set the stage for future crises. The division of the country and its capital was a stark representation of the new global order. It was an order defined by the rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. Life in West Germany was very different from life in East Germany. West Germany received significant financial aid from the Western Allies, especially through the Marshall Plan. This helped its economy recover and grow quickly. People in West Germany enjoyed political freedoms. They could vote in free elections. They had freedom of speech and freedom of the press. There were many opportunities to start businesses and improve their standard of living. Consumer goods became widely available. West Germany became a prosperous and democratic nation. East Germany, on the other hand, developed under Soviet influence. The economy was centrally planned by the state. This system was often inefficient. Many basic goods were scarce or of poor quality. Political freedoms were severely restricted. The Socialist Unity Party, SED, held all the power. There was no real opposition allowed. The secret police, known as the Stasi, monitored citizens closely. People lived in fear of expressing dissent. While the state provided some benefits like guaranteed employment and cheap housing, the lack of freedom and economic opportunity was deeply felt by many East Germans. The differences between the two Germanys became increasingly obvious. West Germany was thriving. East Germany was struggling. Many East Germans looked to the West with envy. They saw the prosperity and freedom enjoyed by their fellow Germans. They also saw a better future for themselves and their families. Before 1961, the border between East and West Berlin was still relatively open. This provided an escape route. Millions of East Germans, especially young and skilled workers, decided to leave their homes. They moved to West Berlin and then often onward to West Germany. This mass migration created a serious problem for East Germany. The country was losing its brightest minds and its workforce. Doctors, engineers, teachers and skilled laborers were leaving in large numbers. This brain drain weakened the East German economy further. It also undermined the legitimacy of the East German government. The leaders in East Berlin and Moscow grew increasingly concerned. They knew they had to do something to stop the flow of people. The constant stream of refugees was a clear sign that their system was failing to satisfy its citizens. This exodus was a major reason for the drastic actions that followed. In the early hours of August 13, 1961, the situation changed dramatically. East German soldiers and police began to seal off the border between East and West Berlin. They put up barbed wire fences. They tore up streets. They blocked train lines. The operation was swift and unexpected. It caught Berliners and the world by surprise. Within a very short time, the open border that had allowed millions to flee to the west was closed. Families were separated in an instant. People who had crossed for work or to visit relatives found themselves trapped on one side or the other. The initial barbed wire barrier was quickly replaced by a more formidable structure. A concrete wall began to rise. This wall eventually stretched for nearly 100 miles. It encircled all of West Berlin, cutting it off from East Berlin and the surrounding East German countryside. The wall was not just a single wall, it became a complex system of fortifications. There were two main walls with a death strip in between. This area contained anti-vehicle trenches, beds of nails and watchtowers. Guards with orders to shoot escapees patrolled the border. The East German government called the wall an anti-fascist protection rampart. They claimed it was built to protect East Germany from Western aggression and spies. They said it was necessary to preserve peace. However, most people around the world saw it for what it truly was. It was a prison wall. It was designed to keep East German citizens from escaping to freedom in the West. The construction of the wall was a desperate act by a government that could not convince its own people to stay. It showed the failure of the communist system in East Germany. The physical features of the wall were designed to make escape almost impossible. The main wall facing West Berlin was often covered in graffiti. The inner wall facing East Berlin was kept clear to give guards a better view. There were numerous watchtowers, approximately 300 of them. These were staffed by armed guards. Bright lights illuminated the border area at night. Dogs were also used to patrol certain sections. The wall became a grim symbol of oppression. It stood as a brutal reminder of the division of Germany and the ideological conflict of the Cold War. Section 5. Life behind the concrete, separation and struggle. Life in Berlin changed overnight with the construction of the wall. For East Berliners, the most immediate impact was separation. Families were torn apart. Friends who lived on opposite sides of the city could no longer meet. People who worked in West Berlin but lived in the East lost their jobs. The wall created a profound sense of isolation and confinement. Daily routines were shattered. The vibrant connections that once existed across the city were severed. The feeling of being trapped became a constant reality for those in the East. The wall was a physical barrier, but also an emotional one. Despite the dangers, many East Germans attempted to escape. These escape attempts were often desperate and ingenious. Some people tried to climb over the wall, others tunneled underneath it. Some tried to swim across canals or rivers that form part of the border. A few even used hot air balloons or light aircraft. Many of these attempts failed. Tragically, at least 140 people are confirmed to have died trying to cross the Berlin Wall. They were shot by guards or died in accidents during their escape attempts. Their stories highlight the immense risks people were willing to take for freedom. The daily struggles for East Berliners were numerous. There were shortages of consumer goods. Waiting lists for basic items like cars or telephones could be years long. Freedom of speech was non-existent. The Stasi, East Germany's secret police, created a climate of fear and suspicion. Neighbors spied on neighbors. Even private conversations could be dangerous if they were critical of the government. Despite these hardships, people tried to live their lives as best they could. They found ways to create small joys and maintain their communities, even under the shadow of the wall and the repressive regime. For West Berliners, life was also affected, though differently. They lived on an island of freedom, surrounded by communism. They felt the constant presence of the wall. It was a grim reminder of the division of their city and their country. However, they also had the support of the Western allies. West Berlin became a symbol of defiance and liberty. It attracted artists and intellectuals. It was a vibrant city, but the wall was always there. It limited their movement into the surrounding East German territory and served as a constant source of tension and sadness for the divided families. Section 6. Echoes over the Wall, Global Voices and Local Impact. The Berlin Wall quickly became more than a local German issue. It was a global symbol of the Cold War. It represented the struggle between democracy and communism. World leaders often visited Berlin to make statements about freedom and division. One of the most famous visits was by US President John F. Kennedy in June 1963. He stood before the wall and delivered a powerful speech. He declared, "Ich bin ein Berliner," I am a Berliner. This phrase showed solidarity with the people of West Berlin. It also sent a clear message to the Soviet Union about American commitment to the city's freedom. These international declarations had a significant impact. They offered hope to the people of West Berlin. They reassured them that they were not forgotten by the Western world. For East Berliners, such speeches, often heard through Western radio broadcasts, were a reminder that the world was watching. They reinforced the idea that the division was unjust and perhaps not permanent. The wall became a stage for political theatre. Each side used it to promote its own ideology. The West portrayed it as a symbol of communist tyranny. The East portrayed it as a necessary defense. Another very significant speech occurred much later. In June 1987, US President Ronald Reagan visited Berlin. He spoke at the Brandenburg Gate, a famous landmark right next to the wall. In his speech, Reagan directly challenged the Soviet leader, Mikhail Gorbachev. He famously said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." These words resonated around the world. They became a rallying cry for those who wanted to see an end to the division of Germany and Europe. The speech put increased international pressure on the Soviet Union and the East German government. The political and social significance of the wall extended beyond these grand speeches. It influenced art, literature, and music. Artists on the western side covered their section of the wall with colorful murals and messages of protest and hope. Musicians wrote songs about the division and the longing for unity. The wall was a constant reminder of human rights abuses. It fueled discussions about freedom, democracy, and self-determination. It kept the question of reunification, alive on the international agenda for decades. The wall was a silent, concrete witness to history. The Section 7, The Wall Crumbles, a City Reunites. By the late 1980s, big changes were happening in Eastern Europe. The Soviet Union, under Mikhail Gorbachev, was undergoing reforms known as glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring. These reforms encouraged more political freedom in Soviet bloc countries. In Poland and Hungary, pro-democracy movements were gaining strength. Hungary began to dismantle its border fence with Austria in May 1989. This created an escape route for East Germans. Thousands travelled to Hungary, officially on holiday, and then crossed into Austria and on to West Germany. This put immense pressure on the East German government. Inside East Germany, public protests grew larger and more frequent. People demanded reforms and the right to travel freely. The Monday demonstrations in Leipzig became particularly famous. Hundreds of thousands of people peacefully marched, chanting "Wir sind das Volk," "We are the people." The East German government was losing control. They were unsure how to respond, especially since the Soviet Union indicated it would not intervene militarily to support them, unlike in previous uprisings in Eastern Europe. The pressure from the people was becoming overwhelming. The fall of the wall on November 9, 1989, happened almost by accident. An East German government official, Günter Schabowski, was giving a press conference. He was supposed to announce new, relaxed travel regulations. However, he had not been fully briefed. When a reporter asked when the new rules would take effect, Schabowski hesitated. He then said, "As far as I know, it takes effect immediately, without delay." This news spread like wildfire. Thousands of East Berliners rushed to the border crossings. They wanted to see if it was true. The border guards were confused. They had not received clear orders. Faced with massive crowds, they eventually decided to open the gates. People streamed through, cheering and crying. West Berliners greeted them with flowers and champagne. It was a night of incredible joy and celebration. People climbed on top of the wall. They danced and sang. They began to chip away at the hated structure with hammers and chisels. The fall of the Berlin Wall was a powerful symbol. It marked the end of the Cold War in Europe and the beginning of German reunification. Section 8. Beyond the bricks legacy of the Berlin Wall. The fall of the Berlin Wall on November 9, 1989 was a pivotal moment in world history. It led directly to the reunification of Germany less than a year later, on October 3, 1990. This was a dream come true for many Germans. However, the process of bringing two very different societies and economies together was complex. There were many challenges. West Germany had to invest huge sums of money to rebuild the East German economy. Many East Germans faced unemployment as old state-run industries closed. There were also social adjustments as people from two different systems learned to live together as one nation again. The physical remnants of the wall were quickly dismantled. Most of it was torn down and recycled. Some segments were preserved as memorials. The most famous is the East Side Gallery. This is a long section of the wall covered in artwork. Other pieces were sold or given to museums around the world. Checkpoint Charlie, the best-known border crossing, became a tourist attraction. While the physical barrier is mostly gone, the memory of the wall remains strong. It serves as a reminder of the city's painful division and the suffering it caused for nearly 3 decades. The Berlin Wall's legacy is multifaceted. It stands as a stark warning about the consequences of tyranny and oppression. It shows how political ideologies can lead to the physical separation of people and the suppression of basic human rights. The wall reminds us of the importance of freedom, freedom of movement, freedom of speech, and freedom of choice. The courage of those who resisted the regime and those who risked their lives to escape is a powerful testament to the human spirit's desire for liberty. Their actions contributed significantly to the eventual collapse of the system. More than just a symbol of past division, the Berlin Wall has also become a symbol of hope and resilience. Its fall demonstrated that even the most imposing barriers can be overcome by the will of the people. It showed that change is possible, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. The peaceful revolution in East Germany that led to the wall's opening is a powerful example of citizen action. Today, the story of the Berlin Wall continues to inspire people around the world who are fighting for freedom and human rights. It teaches us that unity can triumph over division.